Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our Holy Week Reflection series. This Tuesday, we will be looking at the lectionary reading for today, which is also found, as yesterday, in John chapter 20. So first, I'd like to start us off talking about something else entirely, leading into the scripture reading for today. So about 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to cross something off my bucket list. Rob Bell, as many of you know, is a writer and speaker who I am very, very fond of, who I have admired now for well over 10 years. It was a goal of mine to eventually get to hear him speak in person. I was fortunate enough almost 2 years ago to have been able to do exactly that in Seattle when he was there. He was midway through his speaking tour called the Holy Shift Tour, and Richard and I had traveled to Seattle to hear him speak, and we found a hotel just around the corner from the Neptune speaker where the event was happening. So a few hours before the show was going to start, we decided to walk to the Neptune Theater just to get a feel and make sure we knew exactly where it was, and then find somewhere around the theater to eat supper and then come back before the show was about to start. But when we arrived at the theater, there was already a line from the front door across the street and down the sidewalk. We decided that because the seats didn't have any assignment to them and it was general admission, it was best for us to get in line. We got comfortable, or as comfortable as we could, sitting on the retaining wall, and we just started talking to those people around us. We had nothing but time to wait. We met 2 fellow Canadians, 2 girls who had flown in that day from Victoria, a few Seattle locals, and we also met a couple that had driven in from Oregon that day. As we talked and we waited, fortunately it was a beautiful and sunny evening, we noticed that some people were bypassing the line and heading straight through the doors of the Neptune. We asked what was going on, and someone said that there was the option of getting meet and greet tickets, with the opportunity to meet Rob Bell before the show, talk to him, and ask him some questions. The shared level of disappointment between me and the girls from Victoria was palpable. By the time we in Canada had access to the tickets, the meet and greet option was no longer available. We didn't even know they were an option until we found out when we were standing in line. It was one thing to think we were all just going to hear Rob speak at the Neptune Theater. It was another thing entirely to know that there was an event happening so close and yet so far that we just didn't have access to. But once the doors opened and we all chose our seats, sat down, the opening speaker began, and then Rob came on stage. I can't speak for the girls from Victoria, but I, for one, quickly forgot about the missed opportunity because it was just so incredible to hear him speak in person. So here's a question. For those of you who have had the opportunity to meet your heroes, whoever they might be for you, musicians, artists, political figures, human rights activists, whoever it is for you. Or for those of you who dream about it or would simply love to have the opportunity to meet a certain someone, fill in the blank. What is the draw? It may seem silly, but I'm inviting you to think about it. It might be obvious, but what is that burning desire that we have? Do we have a question that we would love for them to answer? Is the dream to engage in conversation with them that will no doubt be filled with their particular wisdom that you can hold in your heart and share with others? Is it just to see if they're as tall in real life as they are on TV? There's no judgment here. I'd like you to sit with that question for a bit, and we're going to come back to it a little later. That question being, what is it that we're wanting when we want to see those we admire? let's look at our story today. So chronologically, this story is happening after the Palm Sunday parade, which is after the story of Mary and the perfume that we read yesterday. So here the Passover festival has begun, and Jews from all over have flocked to Jerusalem, and Jesus and his disciples are there in the crowd. So we're going to start at verse 20 of John chapter 12. Now there were some Greeks among those who went up to worship at the feast. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, with a request. "Sir," they said, "we would like to see Jesus." Philip went to tell Andrew. Andrew and Philip, in turn, told Jesus. So, let's pause here. At the festival, some random Greek guys show up, and they seek out Philip because they want to meet Jesus. They clearly know that Philip has some connection to Jesus. And scholars have said that it makes sense that they approach Philip in the story because Philip's name was a Greek name, even if we're told that he's from Bethsaida in Galilee. And, it makes sense. If I were traveling to another country and I had some need or request, I would also seek out someone who I thought would both be able to understand as well as help me. We're told that Philip does indeed attempt to help. He goes to Andrew, and together he and Andrew go to tell Jesus. Here's what happens right after that. Verse 22. Jesus replied, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. I tell you the truth, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. The man who loves his life will lose it, while the man who hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me." And I'll pause here again. We talked a tiny little bit yesterday about the writer of the Gospel of John. And it's helpful to remember that the Gospel of John is really different from the other three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And if you'd like to use the fancy pants term, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are called the Synoptic Gospels. John is not one of them, because John's Gospel is different. So whereas all four authors of the four Gospels arguably all have their own agendas and their own intended audiences, I'd like to highlight that John's Gospel is a more spiritual gospel, a much more dramatic gospel with all kinds of symbolism and mystery and messages, with an underlying sense that there are insiders and outsiders, with an understanding of those who get it and those who won't get it. So don't get me wrong, I love John's Gospel. It's just important to remember for our reading that the intent, the tone, the way it's written, things that are added in this Gospel are strikingly different from the other three Gospels. So here, rather dramatically, when Jesus is told that there are Greeks who are seeking him out, who would like to see him, this appears to be a sign of sorts for Jesus, who says in response to this information, "The time has come for the Son of Man to be glorified." Apparently, prior to this exact second, the time had not come. But upon hearing the information that these people had come to see Jesus, this is an indication to Jesus that there is now a shift. This appears to be the beginning of events that are about to unfold. And so he goes on in verse 27. "Now, my heart is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it was for this very reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name." Then a voice came from heaven. "I have glorified it and will glorify it again." The crowd that was there and heard it said it thundered. Others said an angel had spoken to him. Jesus said, "The voice was for your benefit, not mine. Now is the time for judgment on this world. Now the prince of this world will be driven out. But I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." He said this to show the kind of death he was going to die. The crowd spoke up. "We have heard from the law that the Christ will remain forever. So how can you say the Son of Man will be lifted up? Who is this Son of Man?" Then Jesus told them, "You are going to have the light just a little while longer. Walk while you have the light, before darkness overtakes you. The man who walks in the dark does not know where he is going. Put your trust in the light while you have it, so that you may become sons of light." When he had finished speaking, Jesus left and hid himself from them. Here ends the reading. So what follows from all of this, in rather dramatic fashion, is Jesus' prediction of his own death. Typical of John, he speaks in metaphor and symbols. There's a thundering voice from heaven, and people don't understand, so he clarifies, still in a symbolic way, that they will have the light for just a little while longer, which we know as Christians journeying together through Holy Week. Now, I am really interested in those Greeks from the beginning of the story, and I'd like to get back to them. In the middle of this earth-shattering revelation for anyone in the story who would have heard and understood exactly what Jesus was saying about his impending death. It is unclear from the reading of this story whether or not the Greeks ever have their request granted. Does the author believe maybe it's implied that they were present for Jesus' speech predicting his death? Or is the point that they didn't get to see Jesus face to face, but heard him from afar? Or maybe they didn't at all. Maybe they were left wondering if Philip ever even gave Jesus the message. But I'd like to go back to our original question that we had tonight. What is it that we are longing for when we want to meet or see up close, be in the presence of those who we have admired from a distance, particularly for a long time? Because what I'm wondering about is this. I'm wondering if the Greeks not only wanted to see Jesus, but wanted Jesus to see them. When we fast forward to Friday, we remember the words of the man being crucified next to Jesus, asking Jesus, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." Because I think that there's a part of us that really wants to be seen, truly seen, known, remembered. We know that feeling when someone we met who we quite liked or admired, maybe once or twice before, remembers us and calls us by name. It feels good, and I'll even go so far as to say that there's a sense of reassurance that comes with that another might have that recognition and remembrance of us. But here's the part that stands out to me from today's story. Whether the Greeks simply followed behind Philip and Andrew and heard the words with their own ears fall from Jesus' lips upon being told of their arrival, or whether they were left disappointed, just standing there and wondering why they even bothered to come all this way. Their mere presence, just by showing up, created this ripple effect and a turning point in Jesus' life story. Because this was the moment, the hour had come that Jesus shared the prediction of what was yet to unfold. And so, my friends, it is my hope for you this Tuesday of Holy Week that you know that your very presence matters. Like the Greeks in the story with curious hearts and minds, may you continue to be curious, and may you continue to show up for others, for yourself, for your faith, because you never know when your very presence is having an effect in ways we may never even know about and never understand. And friends, may you sleep well tonight and meet me back here tomorrow. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye.